Everybody asked the last rains we had, did it make any difference? And no, it didn't. But the latest, we get Friday reports of reservoir levels and all those kind of things, and we're still hovering around 22% of water for in the reservoir system for where we are now on the American side. I always tell people for cities, we own the bottom of the reservoir. So we own the bottom 250,000 acre feet. That belongs to the city. And not quite, you have a little bit of operating reserve, but so cities have 100% of water, and actually we have about 200% of water in the system. Agriculture is a different story. Ag's down below 10%. No new allocations in the last year and a half. So if you use the water, you're pretty well out. So you can support corn and sorghum, I guess, and it's about it for ag. A little bit for citrus to keep the trees alive, but not to grow the fruit. So that's kind of the system is not necessarily changed. As far as Mexico goes, they made a demand that Mexico pay the water debt. They have no water in the reservoir to do that. They're below 10% in the reservoir system. So there's no water for them to do that. And the president of Mexico, she said, well, I'm going to pay the 450,000 acre feet if it rains. So the United States administration said so. We won. We forced Mexico to do something, and so they did. They made a statement. So no promises until the reservoir system's fill up. I don't know if you know about where our water comes from. Actually, we each month increase a little bit on municipal because we have inflow, and the inflow primarily comes out of the Devos and Pecos River. The Devos and Pecos River are the United States contributory rivers to the reservoir system. They run, as Devil's River comes in through San Angelo a little bit, where it's the Edwards Aquifer, where it comes out of the ground. It becomes the Devil's River. The Pecos River is out the north and comes into Amistad from the north, and that river has been depleted because of it's a very rural area, so there's not much regulation, so a lot of people divert from that river without permits, etc. It's hard to enforce it, needs ranches and all that. Obviously, the Devil's River has been, as a outflow of the Edwards Aquifer, been depleted because of San Antonio and even Austin and Grove. So we were thinking of Region M, which Region M is right along the river, goes from Brownsville to Eagle Pass, all along the river counties. And we've been thinking of maybe filing something saying, they need to be, we get our water out of the Edwards Aquifer. They ought to be more careful with their permitting system and all that. But our board has not authorized us to do it at this point. But that would be one of the avenues. The other 2/3 of the water that we get, and really almost all our water comes out of the reservoir system. If you look at the Rio Grande Basin, it runs along the river, and that's about it. And south of the expressway is probably where the basin ends. North of the expressway is an oasis Rio Grande Basin. Its sheet flows northeast. And so when it rains heavily here, what do we do with our water? We get it the hell out of here, right? That's what we do. We have two main drains. One obviously is the floodway system that protects us from the river overflow, but also acts as a drainage system for the southern port of all our counties, especially Hidalgo and Cameron County, and it sends it out to the Arroyo Colorado, out to the Gulf through Arroyo Colorado. The other waters, from all the cities is gathered and goes up through the Raymondville drains as part of the county system. So when it rains here, it's beneficial, but only to the extent it wets the soil. We don't store any of the water that it rains within our watershed, and really probably not possible because it's sheet flows, so it doesn't naturally gather into any water. We artificially gather to our individual city drainage system and the two county systems. And Hidalgo County is much more organized than Cameron County. So that's kind of where we are in the water. There's you can buy water rights, or water rights are available. Laredo bought a bunch of water rights about 3 or 4 years ago, kind of set the price at about 3,000 acres for an acre foot of water, which is 325,000 gallons of water. They raised it. It used to be about 1,500. So almost doubled the price of water rights, with Laredo buying it up from some of the water districts who are selling. That's for Class A rights, which is a full 325. So they have Class B rights. Class B rights are people that live on the river kind of, and they have riparian rights, they use their farmland, small farm, and obtain water rights on that. It's called Class B. Most of those were, like I say, people who live along the river, and those rights are 1/2 of the amount of water available from the Class A. So from 2.5, it goes to 1.25. And they're available too, and they go for used to go about 800, now probably 1,000 because of the radial effect. You can very, very little water sales. I happen to be the last member of the Rio Grande Regional Water Authority. Our board's was created about year 2000, and we do water projects. We do 2 state functions, but really water projects. Our board members were irrigation district members, and they sued the state when the state allowed the San Juan River to be used for water debt from Mexico. The San Juan River comes in to play kind of near Rio Grande City, Arianza's through Sam from the feeds into there, and then it's dispersed into Mexico. It's 100% Mexican water, but Mexico said, we're going to pay some of our debt in the last water cycle using the San Juan River, and the state TCQ accepted that. And so the irrigation district people sued them, and the governor won't appoint anybody that sues the state. So we haven't had a board meeting in 5 years. The last thing they did was make me the executive director. And so I'm still the executive director. I'm appointed by the county, so I didn't have to worry about the governor's appointee. And I haven't had a board meeting in 5 years. But anyways, we still function. We do truth is, we set the price of water sales based on what prior year water sales are of over 100 acres. And so we set that. Cities have a right when they subdivide property and exclude it from a water district, the cities can purchase that water right from the district and force them to sell it. And that's the price that we set based on that acreage. Doesn't happen very often. Most cities have arrangements of the water district to do that conversion naturally and negotiate it without going and assign it to a contract as opposed to an outright sale of the water right. That's how most cities acquire water rights from water districts. And so they very rarely use our sales. But a lot of people, individuals trying to buy Class B rights and all that, will use our figure as their sale price. So anyways, pray for right. But we can see what happens there. But that's kind of where it is. The big issue is groundwater. The irrigation water, irrigation districts don't sell them very often. Some of the urbanized districts still have over 50% of the water rights. The heavily used water districts like Delta Lake, which has a lot of farmland up near Reaganville and all that, they're down below 10%. So already hurting. District number 1 and Hidalgo 6, they have more than 50% of the water rights because they're heavily urbanized. And so they, at some point they're going to have to take a determination if you're not using that for years, can you keep those water rights without somehow the state is technically the owner of that water right. But at any rate, let's see what happens. Nobody's tried to make that an issue yet, but if you look at that, that's it's a real problem. And can you hold water rights without use for one time? Right now you can. I don't know if that'll happen. So that's gambling. So so groundwater is important. We have what they call the Gulf Coast Aquifer. It runs down from Corpus Christi, comes down. When it hits Cameron County, it kind of shifts to the west. So about 2/3 of Cameron County is the Canada Furs, not Brownsville's not in it. Harlingen's right on the edge of it. We're all on it right here. It's Gulf Coast Aquifer. It has about 800,000 acre-feet of water available according to last some estimates that they just put out this last year. You don't need a permit to get it. You just drill a well and you can take it from there. From that standpoint, it's brining, so you can mix it with your existing plant. It's about 15%. That's what McAllen does. Anything over 15% doesn't work on your traditional river water clamp. And so you have to have reverse osmosis. So North Alamo is the biggest entity that uses groundwater. They have, I think, 6 or 8. I can't remember now. They've cleaned the process and do more. Almost 100% of the water now is reverse osmosis groundwater. And so they don't have to depend on irrigation water. It's a little bit more expensive, obviously. They say the upfront costs are much more expensive than river water plants, but it's cheaper to operate because it's electricity versus chemicals. And the chemicals for treating river water are very expensive, gone up, will keep going up, where electricity is kind of stabilized, obviously, for reverse osmosis. So a lot of new growth is we're going to want current standpoint. What else is there? Water reuse.
Brownfield?
Huh?
That's like, all right, reverse osmosis kind of going to.
Yeah, Brownsville plant, it's an aquifer plant, and they have to drill it's much further down, and it's a little more briny, more expensive, but it's still cheaper than using Gulf water, Gulf of Mexico water. They had a pilot project that the state sponsored about, I can't cover 12 or 13 years ago. It's no longer in use, but it was a state water. One of the problems is the reuse of the byproduct. You have to send it out to the Gulf 3 miles out, so getting rid of the byproduct is pretty expensive. It takes a lot of electricity. And the other thing is everybody wants to do projects on Gulf water, but the distribution system so far, not only is it much more expensive to produce the water, it's getting it to you is pretty expensive. And so we've had people who say they want to do that and connect to the city systems, but first off, the cities don't need that much quantity of that to justify the expense upfront capital costs of not only the plant and the operation, which are more expensive than drilling a well where you are, but also the distribution costs are really tremendous. So we've had several come forward with ideas, but they don't have the money to do it. And so we hear in this legislative session, I think there are 2 bills for seawater desalination, and I don't think either one got very far.
And are we going to build a dam on the Rio Grande?
Yeah, there is in the treaty, there's room for one more dam, but where would you put it? And so you could do it, but you have to agree. Mexico, they already have the Enceduas Dam, which is a dam to figure out how the water gets distributed to Mexico, because that's Mexican water from that standpoint because of the San Juan River. But it sounds good, but there's not much you can do about it. Where would you put the dam from a geology standpoint? There's not a really good location. And then how would that work from water rights? It'd be a major negotiation with them about what the water rights are. So most of our water comes out of Mexico. 2/3 of our water comes out of Mexico. And that's kind of the issue right now.
Mayor, one of the ideas that we were tossing around here today was to establish a regional public utilities board. I know that we kind of talked about it a little bit. The benefits, maybe some of the drawbacks to it, and how difficult would it be to get something going?
That'd be hell for cities to we talk about interconnects just between McAllen and Edinburgh at one time, because at McAllen, Edinburgh, and all have a corner. They were all on one corner. And we talked about why it doesn't make sense for us to run our sewer line that are going to dead end at this corner. Why don't we just have one guy one city run the major one, and we'll just split the cost? And that's as big as the discussion got. So we understand Edcouch-Elsa issues of McAllen borders with. I was city attorney for 28 years, and so I've been through all those borders on streets and everything else, trying to get agreement when you're butt up against. Actually, all 4 city limits are up against each other. Then you're getting projects together. We talk a lot about cooperation, getting actually it done to the nitty-gritties, and we all have emergency interconnect. So McAllen is proposing a regional plant, but it'll be McAllen operating, and they're trying to negotiate. They haven't finished negotiations with the other cities about where they want to use it. I think the other cities say, that's fine, we'll keep it as emergency one, maybe redefine emergency, as opposed to have a straight-up project where we're going to take water from. And so that's a problem. The one thing is we get our water from District Number 2, supplies 3 of our cities with a lot of our river water is one irrigation district. And so that was pretty well. I think the issue would be, if they could do a more efficient delivery system than we have right now would make a lot more sense than the treated water side. And, that gets some of some of the district, some of the irrigation districts are now 90% city delivery, 10% ag, but getting them they have a separate board, and getting cooperation and coordination from that is relatively difficult. So, for whatever reason. And the state doesn't want to get involved.
Is irrigation district to the city, so in regards to making sure they have one?
How what?
How obligated are they?
This contractually.
Contractually, there's no other.
It's not governed by the state or anything like that. It's just a delivery contract, and that plays.
Not if they just didn't have.
A couple of years ago, Donna, when they had the problem with Donna, they didn't have any push waters and didn't know what it was, and the district said go out and buy it, and they had to try to go scrounge his what. And then you have different from a water master's office, you had a different delivery point now for that water, so it really becomes complicated. Don't wait, and work with your districts, make sure you know where they are, what their situation is, and talk to them from that standpoint. But so the state does run it from the Texas TCEQ has a water master office. They coordinate all the deliveries, etc., and releases. I go to their meetings. No cities are there. Stillwater goes dominated. That's one of the issues. We always depend on the water districts in the hard times where we have no relationship with them, except probably a negative relationship, at least over my experience over years of that. About that, so some are better and some are worse, but they feel that there's agriculture created them. They're dedicated to agriculture first,
And that's the only time that you deliver water and see where the city benefits.
yeah, and you get they call it push water. City gets the right egg, push water to their location or their plant, and when there's no egg in the system, you better go buy some push water from somebody. And there's no regulation of that price. They could charge whatever they want. And so, but anyways, outcome is groundwater. I think is going to be, especially if you can mix 15%. That's a pretty good deal to give you time to figure out what you're going to do, because it's pretty well there's aquifers all right next to your plant. That's what flows on here, and it's a little briny, but it can be mixed up to 15%. And that's probably what a lot of cities are doing. So we requested the way it works for the Texas Water Development Board. Those cities the states divided into region. We're Region M. Like I said, we run along the river all the way to Eagle Pass. There's 16 other regions in the state. All have their own plans. So the big thing on that is you have to have your strategy as an individual water supplier as a city in order to get funding from Texas Water Development Board. It's pretty easy to do, but if you wait beyond when we adopt the 5-year plan, which you're going to do this December, then you have to independently get it amended, the plan amended, and you got to pay an engineer. It takes a little while to do it. You have to pay the advertising costs, and so you don't want to delay it. So pretty easy to do, and I think we're going to try to get that in this new 5-year plan, sort of when the city's here. But pray for rain.
Pray for rain.
Yeah.
That's a call to everybody to make sure they get everything they need to.
Throw it in there. It doesn't hurt to throw it. You don't have to do it. Just get it in there.
I was part of that last amendment a couple of years ago, and that took some undertaking to get that done.
One of the smaller cities wanted to buy water rights, and they wanted a loan from Texas Water Development Board to do it. And so they had to amend the plan. And it cost more for the engineering to do for the plan than it was going to cost the water rights. And so the commissioner from Texas Water Development was sitting next to me. It was at the Council of Governments, and I told him, I said, it was going through all this. I said, you know what? McAllen will sell you the 200 acre feet of water. We're going to go then, and we'll finance it. And I told the commissioner at the time, I said, this is crazy that it's got to have some de minimis rule that you don't have to have that in the plan. Everybody should have that as a strategy, so you shouldn't have to amend a water plan to the development board zones. But at any rate, the development board is the money portion. They're the ones that lend money or grant money. They have billions of dollars, and they control that. And TCQ is a regulatory entity, and so they control everything from a regulatory, from the sewer treatment plant, the water plant, etc. And they don't necessarily talk to each other, by the way, and they don't coordinate things. So sometimes the Water Development Board are proposing, these are good ideas, and you're going to run into regulatory problems over here when you do it. So when you're ever thinking about it, you got to think money and the opposite regulatory side before you start, because you don't want to go down one track and not ditch in the, then yet you don't have ability to do it the other way.
Jim, earlier we were talking about potentially a company like Amazon building a very big plant in Hidalgo, and then there's talk of the valley getting 2 or 3 data centers. From your research, do we have enough water for projects of that size?
Yeah, you know, you could do, I think you could do reuse. That's where McAllen's, for instance, McAllen's North plant, 100% of their water is reused, their sewage treatment plant. They have a contract with Calpine, so they do, I'm Calpine's successor, to do the coolant water for the electrical plants. They have a contract with major housing developments, the roads to people, to do the irrigation for yards, and but it was so big they ran a separate system. In most water districts, if you're going to have a development like that, make you go out and buy the water rights. Sierra Land Water Supply Corporation says, we'll supply you, but you got to go buy the water rights. And so most developers say, who the hell do I buy them for? I got to deal with a water district. It's crazy and expensive. And so the city went in and said, you know, it's probably cheaper and better. We'll supply the water for you, which is purple water out of our sewage treatment plant for your lawn irrigations. I don't know if I go slip and slide on them, but anyway. And so they do it. It's over 1,000-acre development. And so it's 100%, in the summertime especially, 100% of the sewer water is reused. And so if you have a big industrial project, you can take a look at reuse as one of the solutions to that problem. And so McAllen had a big project when I was mayor. Don't ever be city attorney and become mayor because all the problems are yours. All the mistakes are yours. But anyway, we had a major project on that. And we finally got over the water issue and something else happened. But yeah, they're interested in that. And you can retroplant relatively easy. From what you're doing right now, it doesn't take too much more to make it the purple water plant. We've had the big water projects in that Hidalgo County. The county judges sponsored some of those. And the first thing I asked is, what's it going to cost 1,000 gallons? And they can't give you the answers. And the last project that he had said, well, we're doing a feasibility study. That's why I invited all the cities here in the Water Supply Corporation. And they wanted $6 million to do the feasibility study. And we said, we could do a lot of, $6 million, we could do a lot of water projects. You can know that. And then I think lastly is the dichotomy between the water supply corporations and the cities. You know, the state's divided up in what they call certificates of convenience and necessity areas. And so you can't serve in another one than you are. So most of our cities, I don't know if you have, but probably have grown into a water supply corporation. And you can't supply the potable water. It was a good class. We put sewer up through a system like that, like McAllen did, but you're cut off. And that's been a problem for us from a standpoint of industrial growth. When you go out there and you're recruiting a big industry, and they want a big tract of land, it's almost impossible to find it in the city limits. And so you're out in the rural area, which the city can annex, but it can't provide the water service. I think North Alamo does sewer service, Water Supply Corporation, I'm not mistaken. So anyway, so most of our cities can provide sewer service, they can't provide water service in our rural areas because of the CCN rights. And that's never going to change in the legislature that allow dual certifications, for instance, and take over a water system unilaterally. And so that's from a growth standpoint, that's always a big concern. Any other question?
Sure.
Kelly,
What's with the irrigation district merging, or what did I read what did I read about irrigation districts merging?
Yeah.
So
Thanks. It's how they fight. You know, District Number 3, McAllen, we've been, I've been with the city I'm still with the city, I'm on the bridge board, 46 years now, 47 years, and we've always fought with District Number 3. And in fact, past mayors have actually become on their board, and I didn't do this, but that's an issue. You got the main water district running right in the middle of the city, and you haven't agreed with them in since time to end. And They actually, when we want to put Bicentennial Boulevard north, we use our right of way. Yeah, and that's kind of been, we paid a lot of money for it over the years. Some of it was given, some was not. But so when we went north, they said, "Well, let us go with you, the district." And we said, "Okay, we'll let them go." And they stopped at District Number 1's canal, and this is District Number 3. And they tried to go over the canal, and District Number 1 said you can't. And they said we're going to condemn it. Well, to condemn it, if you're condemning another city or entity, you have to show a paramount public purpose to do it. And they won that lawsuit. And so once they got over District Number 1's canal, they went to that water district, Santa Cruz Water District, I think it is, which is northeast of Edinburgh, and said, "We'll supply water to you cheaper than District Number 1."
Oh, shit.
So not only they got across their canal, they stole their customer. And when they did that, they merged. The way they got around that from a contractual standpoint is they dissolved that district and merged it into one with District Number 1's top 3. Supply that entity for water. Wow. Pretty serious stuff. Not a lot of bad. And District 1's got water too, because they're mainly McAllen and Edinburgh, and so they urbanized quite a bit. So they got 50% of their water rights. So that's how they did that. And usually you don't see water districts fight like that, but that's one exception. That's been kind of a,
Yeah.
that's kind of what's going on. You did this article on that. You probably, was I correct in what I said? Yeah. And they went to number 1 and said, we'll give you to the district, we'll do it cheaper for you than District Number 1 could. So that happened. Generally, they get along, districts get along, they all border up against each other. If you take a look at it, we're covered by irrigation districts. And the problem with most of this is the cities have gone north of the districts. And the districts have never expanded their territory. Very, very rarely has the district gone and said, "I'm going to extend the canals north," taking more territory, because the existing farmers won't vote for that. I'm not going to vote for a competitor. It's going to cost me more money, more operational company, more capital costs. It's not going to do it though. And so that property's been urbanized anyways.